Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have a little bit of a special review. This is going to be review number 3900, and as I always do with these little mini milestone reviews here on the channel, I just want to give a little thank you to all of you who have supported the channel over the last 10 years. Crazy to think that that's how long it's been going. But, you know, a huge part of the reason that it's still going is you guys that watch the videos. So a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you who've, you know, liked, subscribed, given me beer suggestions, just made comments on the videos, shown me around your local places when I visited, or even organised beer mule boxes for me. That's what the channel's all about, and that's what I really enjoy about it. So there will definitely be 10 more years of Rampant Lion Reviews at least. We'll probably go well beyond that. But yeah, it is really humbling just to see something that I started as a wee hobby kind of grow to be something pretty cool and that quite a lot of people enjoy. So again, just a massive thank you to all of you for your support over the last 10 years. It's been awesome. But yeah, for this review today, we are going to stick to Scotland. We're going to continue on with this little mini series of reviews that I've been doing for you that I've entitled Crazy Beers for 10 Years. The idea behind this, of course, is to celebrate 10 years of Rampant Lion Reviews being live here on YouTube. And we're going to go to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. We're sticking to Scotland, like I said. These guys are probably the best, the most well-rounded brewery in Scotland, if you can describe them that way. One of my personal favourites. And the beer that we're having a look at today is a style I've tried from them a few times before. It's one that I know they can do very well. It's from a part of the beer spectrum that I know they do very, very well as well. And it is supposed to be a very nice example of that style. So needless to say, I'm really, really curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to the Scottish Borders region. We're going to go to the eastern side of the Scottish Borders to a little place called Galashiels. And that of course means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Tempest Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Worlds Within Worlds. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is a barley wine, and it's part of their Bourbon Odyssey series that they did. So basically this one is a barley wine aged in 3 different kinds of American bourbon casks. It's Old Fitzgerald, Elijah Craig and Heaven Hill, and I think this was one of 4 that they released, and the reason I chose this one out of the 4 is that this is a blend of the barrels that were used for the other 3. The other 3 are all single barrels, so yeah, I didn't think it was a good idea to get 4 different barley wines, so I thought we would go for the one that was the blend, because that was probably going to be the most kind of complex one. But yeah, it's supposed to be a very nice beer, this, and like I say, this is a style that I know these guys can do very, very well. In fact, very recently I had the Dream Sequence, which was a collaboration with Dead End Brew Machine. That was a rye wine, and that was absolutely beautiful. You know, Tempest Brewing Company, I know they're solid, but they can really surprise you sometimes, and they certainly did with that beer. But yeah, this is one of their kind of crazier releases in recent times, and you will see another one of their crazy releases in a few videos time as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But this is a beer that I picked up at Luvian's when I was over in St Andrews showing my friend around. Lovely little beer shop actually. Well, I say beer shop, but they've got a great selection of whiskey, some really nice wines as well, and some really quirky and unusual craft beers. So if you're in St Andrews, do go and check out Luvian's on the main street. Great little shop, and I will be back there the next time I'm over that way. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. Worlds Within Worlds, a 12% bourbon barrel-aged barley wine from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels in the Scottish Borders region. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Tempest Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future because I love their beers. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging systems. Just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. So do make sure you do that, because there's some really interesting stuff on the channel these days. But let's go on then and chat a little bit about Tempest Brewing Company once again before we open up the beer. So, Tempest Brewing Company, as I've mentioned here, are currently located in Galashiels in the Scottish Borders region, and the company was founded back in 2010 by Gavin and Anika Meiklejohn. So Anika trained as a chef in New Zealand, and the couple returned to Scotland in 2007 to run the Cobbles Bar in Kelso. But Gavin had actually worked for Whistler Brewing Company in British Columbia over in Canada, and so he had long had an appreciation for craft beer. He also took some brewing courses in Sydney down in Australia, and he also homebrewed in his garage in Wellington in New Zealand as well, which, as we know, is a very famous beer city. But there he was developing recipes using a little 50-litre brew kit, and he eventually decided that he wanted to take that homebrewing hobby and go professional, and so when they got involved in running pubs and things, he thought that he would experiment with that as well. But soon after starting up the company, Gavin was joined by Alan Rice, who acts as the company's business development manager. He previously worked for Stewart Brewery up in Edinburgh and also lived in Australia and New Zealand, and so had an appreciation of the craft beer culture down there. But the brewery was originally housed in old dairy buildings in Kelso, and the brew kit that they had there was largely homemade, and it was engineered to produce like really big flavoured beers on pretty much a shoestring budget. But their beers proved to be very, very popular, and they moved to their current and bigger home at the Tweedbank Industrial Estate over in Galashiels. In June of 2019, they submitted plans to build a new brewery building with a bar and restaurant on the site of the former Eldon Mill, which is basically just across the road from the new Tweedbank train station. But this move has still yet to be finalised. I think it was kind of put on hold because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic. But these days they have a little tap room that they open up on the weekends at their brewery. I do recommend that you go and check that out, and everyone that I've ever encountered with Tempest Brewery are, really nice, lovely, lovely people. And like I said, in my opinion, Tempest Brewing Company are the best, the most well-rounded craft brewery in Scotland, actually. And they are, I'd say that they're probably the most, they're my personal favourite, I think. Overtone, as I say, very good for their New England hazies. You've got the sour beer breweries like Vault City and Holy Goat, who are doing some awesome stuff as well. There are some very, very good breweries these days. Dead End Brew Machine, he's great too, but all just brewing on a very small scale, unfortunately. But yeah, we've got some very, very good brewers in Scotland these days. But for me, Tempest are one of the kind of long-standing and most consistent brewers, I think is definitely fair to say. So if you haven't tried some of the Tempest beers, I highly recommend that you do. Personal favourite of mine would be the Old Parochial, which is their Scotch ale. Beautiful stuff that. Their bourbon, their barrel-aged stouts that they do are always great as well. And if you want something a little bit more easy to access, the Long White Cloud and Longer White Cloud, the New Zealand West Coast IPAs, and also the Modern Hellas is a very nice beer as well, so make sure you check out those should you get the chance. Marmalade on Rye, lovely old school West Coast IPA in my mind too. But yeah, that's everything I can tell you about Tempest Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So let's go on and actually have a little taste of this beer and see what it's all about. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. I'm not sure exactly what this is meant to be, if this is a landscape in Kentucky or something like that. But you can see the artwork on this one is a wee bit different from what we've seen from Tempest Brewing Company in recent videos. The last beer we reviewed, of course, was the Purple Burglar Alarm, which was really interesting. But yeah, there you can see Tempest Brewing Company. There you can also see the older lightning bolt and the glass symbol of Tempest 2, and it tells you a wee bit about the beer on the side here. So it says, the Bourbon Odyssey continues into the wilds of Kentucky, where the deeper you go, the more mysterious it gets, and before long you're discovering worlds within worlds. For this, the ultimate blend, we handpicked the finest bourbon casks and aligned the worlds of Old Fitzgerald, Elijah Craig and Heaven Hill, creating a cosmic brew that hits all the smooth, smoky, rich, spicy, vanilla and caramel notes of these wondrous casks. World Within Worlds is a tribute to the cellar masters from old bourbon country who rightly assume a near godlike effigy atop their pedestals. So yeah, I do need to try a bit more bourbon. I haven't had too much, of course, because being Scottish we don't tend to need to, but I should explore it that little bit more. But yeah, as you can see, 750ml bottle this one. I paid £16 for this. You would get it for about £14.50 I think it was, or 14 from Tempest directly. So the shop aren't taking too much of a they're not putting too much of a markup on it, I have to say. So that's another good thing about Luvians, I guess. But you can see it's got this lovely kind of wax top to it. I did have to take a chunk out of it at the back so that I can actually get the thing open on camera. Otherwise, that would not be fun. But yeah, let's just get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. The Worlds Within Worlds from the Bourbon Odyssey series, a 12% bourbon barley aged Barleywine, or a blend of 3 barley wines. So yeah, let's do this. Let's see if I can get this guy out. We might have to pause it again. Yeah, we might have to pause this again and just do it. Let me just see if I can get underneath this thing. Nah, I think we'll just pause it again and come back in a wee second. So, be right back. Alright guys, I think we have it. So let's do this and see if we can get it open. There we are. Got ya. Nearly. Oh, it's just a little too thick. There we go. There we go. It's the only thing with these wax tops. Just look how bloody thick that thing is. Craziness. But yeah, we do now have it open. So let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. And I tell you something, as soon as I got the little, the little from the cap, you could smell this beer. It's lovely stuff. So I think we've got about half of it out and into the glass at the moment, so we can have a proper look at this thing. So yeah. This looks absolutely lovely. So as you would kind of expect, it hasn't got much of a head to it, but before what's there disappears, we'll have a wee look at that first. But you can see it's just got that lovely little foamy ring around the edge of the glass. You can see it's about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn coloured head there. So it's got that lovely kind of wispy foam just sitting on the surface there, and a nice little kind of bubbly character around the edge of it. But it looks really nice. It's almost like a kind of fawn ivory type colour that comes out of this one. So if you shine the light through this, you can see that this beer has actually got a good little bit of kind of haze to it and things. It's a sort of very dark, murky, chestnutty colour. It's actually not a million miles away from the colour of the glass bottle, to be quite honest with you. But it looks great. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the surface of it, which has, as I say, faded away to just be a very, very thin, foamy layer. Pardon me, but it looks absolutely great. You can see a few little bits of sediment particle just kind of floating around in this one as well, so I must have agitated it when I was trying to open the thing up. But it looks really, really nice, this one. So yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. And when it comes to the kind of brown beers like this one, the barrel can actually play a good little bit of a role there. But just judging by the colour of this one, I think this has had a little bit of a longer wort boil as well. But we'll be able to tell that a little bit from the aroma and from actually tasting the thing. But yeah, you can see there's a few wee sediment particles just floating around in this one. But it looks really, really nice, this one. So certainly not anything unusual appearance-wise when you consider the style, but it looks as I say, it looks absolutely great, this one. So, yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of the beer. We can dive in and have a wee look at the aroma. I'm just glad we got the thing open at the end. Yeah, so let's do this. Let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one. Oh, yeah. This is going to be pretty damn good. This is just one of these. This was almost like an impulse purchase. Like when I saw this, when I saw this beer, it was literally a case of fuck it, why not? I didn't go into the shop intending to buy anything because I had quite a lot of beer to get through, but this one I just could not resist. Sucker for Tempest and a sucker for Barleywines. You know, it's a bad combination, but a very good combination, as I'm sure you know. But aroma-wise, this is lovely. It gives you everything you'd expect. You've got a lovely smooth woody character in this one. You've got the bourbon complexity in there, the big brown sugary notes from the barley wine side of things too. Lovely fruity characteristics and just a wee bit of hoppiness. Everything, as I say, that you would want from a barley wine. So, yeah, for me, beautiful stuff. I think this is going to be something special. So let's just try and break that aroma down then and describe it for you a wee bit more kind of in depth. So, yeah, aroma-wise, you have this lovely kind of smooth, oaky backbone to this one. So yeah, lovely smooth kind of oaky backbone. It really is great. So yeah, lovely smooth oaky backbone in this one. As I've often said, for me there's quite a distinctive difference between American oak and European oak. American oak is a lot smoother and gives you a bit more of a kind of vanilla type quality. And if we're talking about bourbon versus Scotch whisky, bourbon of course is a lot sweeter. American stuff does tend to be a lot sweeter than European stuff in my general experience. But yeah, feel free to comment on that below if you want. But yeah, you can smell the lovely smooth American oak in this one. It is of course a different species of tree from the European oak, which makes sense. But yeah, you get that lovely little bit of vanilla in there, and there's so much complexity from the bourbon in this one. Like, for me, I always find that bourbon's a little bit more oily and kind of aromatic. Like the brown sugary notes that you get from bourbon for me are always a little bit more aromatic than what you would get from Scotch whiskies, which are a bit drier and a bit more kind of oily, I would say. So for me, you've got this really aromatic brown sugar, quite a little bit light and toasty, lovely kind of oily sweetness in there, and yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. It's beautiful. I mean, I think we're going to get more complexity out of this in the flavour, obviously, but the bourbon aroma in this one, I'm a bit of a bourbon novice, I have to say. Scotch whisky I can do, but bourbon, yeah, for me, this is, as I say, the brown sugars are a little bit oily, they're a little bit aromatic. I get a wee bit of floral character out of this one, of course, as well, but it goes together really nicely. On top of that, you're starting to get all of the big barley wine character out of this one, and I think I can say from the aroma of this one that this has had quite a little bit of a long boil, I would say. Nothing wrong with that. So, the backbone of the barley wine, for me, you've got a good little bit of this kind of rye bready character coming out of it, which is absolutely lovely. So yeah, lovely big sort of rye bready bread crust in there. It's got a wee bit of dryness. On top of that, big oily. So on top of the bread crust, you've got the more oily caramelised rye bready character coming out of this one. And then you have, above that, you've got a little bit more of a sort of, how would you say, you have got a little bit more of a kind of, you've got a little bit more of this kind of like brandy soaked, cognac soaked fruit loaf type thing. That's what I'm really getting there. So you've got the rye bread, the brandy soaked fruit loaf, then a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready character on top of that, bit of a sweet, cakey sort of thing in there as well, which is really nice. It's lovely stuff. On top of that, you start to get the brown sugars, of course. So for me, the brown sugary notes you get in this one are really complex, and that's because of the bourbon as well. But you can smell like some nice leathery brown sugar. Yeah, so some really nice leathery brown sugar in there. A little bit of a toasty brown sugar. Big oily sweet caramel as well. Yeah, so big oily sweet caramel. Definitely a wee touch of like a treacle molasses sort of thing. And yeah. Yes, a little bit of treacle molasses. A little bit of a little bit of a sweet caramel, a little touch of biscuit as well actually. And then yeah, the leathery brown sugars and the toasty brown sugars underneath it. It's a beautiful smelling beer, this one, I have to say, and I wouldn't expect anything less of Tempest, of course. Awesome stuff. Yeah, that's really good. So for me, on top of that, you have you've got a little bit of nuttiness comes out of this one. The further into the nose you go as well. That's quite a big subtlety though. But then after that, you start to get the nice kind of you still get a little bit of the hoppy character out of this one. So the thing you have to remember with barley wines is that barley wines are essentially the big brothers of the double IPAs, because you've got pale ale IPA, double IPA, and then barley wine are related to each other. They're a family of beers, and it's the hop to malt ratio that changes. The modern triple IPA and quadruple IPA, I believe, technically speaking, takes the double IPA malt to hop ratio and just puts more malt in it and makes it bigger, of course. And then yeah, the same with the quadruple IPAs. The barley wine has a completely different hop to malt ratio. But yeah, for me, even though this is barrel aged, I'm not sure exactly when it was bottled. It doesn't actually say on it. But it says it's best before June 2026. Maybe this is from 2021, just going from the fact that it's got some sediment in it. And I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure from the Scotch ale that I had as well. I bought that at the brewery last year, and I think this was released about the same time. I think this beer is from 2021. But yeah, you still get quite a little bit of hoppy character at this, and there's a wee bit of earthiness in there. You've got a little touch of piney resin too, but very minimal. A little bit of floral aromaticity, good little bit of grassy, zesty character as well. And then you of course have the nice big fruity characters, which are really what you would expect. So for me, the fruity side of this beer, the fruity side of this beer, I would say, is quite I would say that it's got a lot. You get a little bit of sharp raisin out of it. Big juicy plum, of course. There's a wee bit of that prune and date underneath. Big oily, nice kind of big oily figgy character. Black currants, and then a little bit of a. There's a little bit of a sort of. You've got a little bit of that kind of black currant and blackberry on top of this one, but the fruity notes are the blackberry notes are quite are really nice in this. It's just a beautiful smelling beer. I could sit and smell this all day, but to be honest with you, I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. And it should have warmed up a wee bit and opened up a wee bit now as well, but you can see the condensation on the side of the glass there. That's quite impressive. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see what we have in store for us. So this one is Worlds Within Worlds, a 12% bourbon barrel aged barley wine from Tempest Brewing Company, a blend of barley wines aged in Old Fitzgerald, Elijah Craig and Heaven Hill casks, all of which are from Kentucky, bourbon country in the States. Let's get stuck into this one. So here's to 3,900 reviews. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. It's absolutely lovely, that. I will say though, this is really interesting because, I mean, this is just really oily, silky smooth, really silky smooth beer, this one. The thing that's interesting for me is the sweetness that you get out of this is really dry and almost really kind of subtle in a way, and it just lingers. I mean, if I think back to I was expecting something with this one a wee bit more akin to the Dream Sequence, the rye wine, but then again, that one that they did with Dead End Brewing Machine, like that had some adjuncts and things in it too, which were pretty special. So yeah, this is awesome. This is a beautiful beer once again, but it's just a different approach, a change of pace, I think is the phrase I'm looking for. This one compared to the other stuff we've had from Tempest, because you always expect Tempest to be kind of big and bold. I mean, I think of Old Parochial as well. That's a very bright beer, if that makes sense. This one's a lot more kind of subtle and just really smooth. But it's equally lovely. It is equally lovely, this one. This is definitely more of a kind of... this is definitely just a sipper. This one, of course, too, which makes sense when it's a barley wine. But yeah, this is really interesting for me because it's like a brewery I know very well, just showing you a different side of what they can do, and I like that about this. So thumbs up to Tempest Brewing Company for doing something a wee bit different here. This is lovely. And I would say that when you take a few more sips of this, it really does kind of brighten up a wee bit and show you that bigger, fuller sweetness that I was kind of expecting. But it's awesome. This is really good. So happy with this one. Very happy with this. This beer, as I say, for the style, it gives you everything that you would want, to be honest with you. It's kind of in the middle of an English barley wine and an American barley wine for me, because it has the big dryness and of the English barley wine, but it's also got the kind of more oily smoothness of the American one too. So yeah, really interesting stuff, this. But let's break the beer down and describe the flavour a bit more in depth for you, as I always do with these things. So middle third of your palate, you've got that lovely smooth American oak backbone there, and it's great. It really is very nice. So yeah, the smooth American oak backbone, you can feel that further back on that middle third of your palate, it's got a lovely kind of dry. It's got that lovely kind of dry, a little bit of dryness there, and as you move further forward, you can feel the wood just kind of smoothens out a little bit and shows you a wee bit more of a kind of vanilla type quality. And of course the bourbon spirit just sits on top of that, which is great. And the bourbon spirit, as I say, for me, is quite interesting. And I'm a bit of a novice with bourbon, like I said, but again, for me it's quite an interesting combination, this, because you do get a wee bit of alcohol warmth down here out of this beer. Obviously with it being 12%, that makes sense. But the spirit layer that you get in this one, above the wood, you can feel further forward it has a little bit more of a, it's got a wee bit more of that kind of oily, sweet, brown sugary type character coming out of it, which is great. So you get that oily kind of sweet bourbony type note, and then yeah, on top of that you get that oily kind of more brown sugary note, but then above that it feels as if there's like a little bit of a toasty brown sugar layer, and then you have this kind of more aromatic kind of brown sugary layer sitting on top of everything. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice, and that gets a big thumbs up from me for sure. So yeah, the spirit layer in this is really interesting, but as I say, it's very smooth in this beer. You'll find the further you go into the aftertaste, the smoother that whole layer gets, and then the actual beer side of things, if that makes sense, the actual malt base is ridiculously smooth as well. It's had a very, very long wort boil, but it's just very, very silky. So I mean, above the spirit layer, you do get a little bit of an almost kind of rye bready bread crust there. That does give you a little bit of dryness. You'll feel a little bit more of that the further into the aftertaste that you go with this beer, for sure. So you get that little bit of a rye bready bread crust. Above that, you do get a sweeter, caramelised rye bready character coming out of this one, and then you get this quite dense, you get this sort of like really dense, brown bready. You get this really dense, like brandy soaked, cognac soaked, like fruit loaf type thing coming out of this one. So yeah, you've got the rye bready bread crust, you've got the kind of sweet caramelised rye bread, then you've got the really dense kind of wholemeal, you've got the really dense like brandy cognac soaked fruit loaf sort of thing, and within that layer, further forward on the palate, you get a wee touch of nuttiness, and then above that you get the kind of wholemeal brown bread in there too, and then you get the kind of brown sugary layer sitting on top of that. So yeah, the brown sugary layers that you get out of this one are great. I mean, the first layer of brown sugar that you get is that big leathery thing, and when you get a big leathery brown sugar layer like that, that's almost a dead indication that it's had a longer wort boil, and the smoothness and silkiness you get out of this beer is another kind of indicator. But that mouthfeel is also given to you a little bit by the barrel aging, so makes sense. But yeah, on top of that, you have you've got this lovely kind of more toasty brown sugar layer. It's very light toast, very light toasty brown sugar there, and then you've got a little circle in the middle of your palate there where you've got like a sweet caramel and butterscotchy type thing. Then in the dead centre of that middle third of your palate, you get the kind of treacle molasses kind of thing, the concentration of the alcohol. At 12% EBV, this certainly isn't the strongest of barley wines that I've had. And if I think about the dream sequence that I was talking about before, that is a little bit stronger than this one. I think that was 14, if I remember rightly. That was a monster, and it was just that little bit brighter in its sweetness. But yeah, this beer just takes a completely different approach, but it covers the alcohol very, very well. The only kind of giveaway is this little warmth you get down here. But yeah, this should be drunk like a wine, of course. That's the thing. That's why it's called barley wine. But it's great. But the combination of flavours you get in this is awesome. But I think we've covered the middle third of the palate now. So let's have a wee look at the back third of the palate. Remember, as I always say, that on the back third of the palate you will get similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but they'll come out at different intensities. But do remember the general trend from your palate, that from front to back you'll get sweeter flavours further forward, more dry and bitter flavours further back. So let's just have a wee look at that border region between middle and back third of your palate. So yeah, that border region between middle and back third of your palate, you do have a lovely little bit of wholemeal. You've got a lovely little bit of that kind of wholemeal, and I would say at the base of the beer, at the base of that border region, you've got a little bit of a kind of sort of almost like a kind of the brandy soaked bread, if you like, and then further, well actually no, it's more the rye bread, the dense rye bread underneath, and then the kind of more brandy and cognac soaked fruit bread sitting above that. So yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. But then the base of the back third of your palate there is what you'd expect. You know, you get the really drier elements of the American oak in there. You can feel the bourbon layer on top of that, which feels a little bit drier and a little bit more leaning toward that kind of roasty, toasty, brown sugary side of things. Then you've got a drier rye bready, crusty character above that. Then you can feel you've got a nice kind of, you do have the kind of a more airy, lighter and airy rye bready character there. Then you've got the kind of brandy, cognac soaked You've got the brandy cognac soaked fruit bread kind of thing in there. Then you've got a more wholemeal bready character above that. But these layers are all lighter and more airy than they are in that middle third of your palate. And you can feel some of the dry brown sugars, just the leathery dry brown sugars just creeping over the top of that. Some of the toasty brown sugar as well. And that's what's capping off the malty part of that back third of the palate. And then above everything else, you're getting the kind of yeasty notes out of this one too. So let's have a wee look at those. So yeah, for me, the yeasty side of this beer, it has a really nice kind of sweet brown bready. Yeah, you've got that really kind of sweet. How would we say? It's like a really sweet, like dense caramel soaked, maple syrup soaked. Rye bready character that's in there. That's the yeasty character for me, sitting above everything else. You get a bit of woodiness around it, you get a little bit of honeycomb around it. I always get honeycomb on the yeasty side of things for some reason, but that sits above everything else on that back third of your palate. You can absolutely feel that the flavour is taller there on the back third of your palate. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of squashes down and goes together that little bit more. But yeah, it's awesome stuff actually. I really like how the malty, yeasty and barrel side of this beer just interact. It's a ridiculously smooth beer, this one. Absolutely great. Yeah, I do wonder what this was like when it was fresh actually, if how much of the smoothness in this one is due to the fact that the bottle's about 2 years old, something like that. I'd be interested to know that. But yeah, I think we can go on to the hoppy side of things now, to be honest with you. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of kind of earthiness in there, very smooth earthiness. As you move further forward, you get a little touch of a herbal character as well. Then as you push further forward toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you get a little bit more sort of floral aromaticity out of this one, which is great. So yeah, the floral aromaticity out of this beer is really nice. It's quite, it has a little bit of like floral spice to it, but at the same time it's quite oily, and it's just got that little bit of aromaticity sitting above the kind of oily character. But then yeah, around the front curve of your palate, you still get the oiliness there, but you've got the grassiness. There's a wee bit of zestiness to it, but it's almost a little bit like a kind of wet, leafy kind of grassiness that you get out of this one. And as I say, this is a barrel-aged beer, so the green component will have dropped out of it, and it is 2 years old too, so that will have kind of amplified the effect a little bit. But still, it's really quite nice. Yeah, I think the way that that goes together is really nice. This one, lovely beer. This on the hoppy side of things too. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and the fruity side of the beer. So for me, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. It's like the kind of rye bread underneath, and then the more cakey, like brandy cognac soaked sort of thing sitting above that. The base of the front third of your palate's the really smooth side of the American oak in there. Good little bit of vanilla within the wood, and a little bit of butterscotch as well. Then you've got the spirit layer, which is leaning toward the more, it's showing you a good little bit of that kind of aromatic brown sugar, if it's right to call that, the more kind of corny aromatic brown sugar actually. And then above that you get a wee bit of the smooth bready character, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at the juicy fruity ester side of things with this beer. So for me, the fruity side of this beer is absolutely lovely. When you first take it in, I would say, first off, I think there's a lot of blackcurrant and there's a lot of like prune to this one. But when you first take the beer in, you do get a little tiny touch of like raisiny sharpness. So yeah, there's a little bit of a raisiny sharpness with this one. So you can feel that at the back of that front third of your palate. You do get that raisiny sharpness there, but underneath that you quite quickly get a very juicy plum, a drier prune underneath, and then you get the big daty characters sitting at the back of that, the kind of deity character just sitting at the back of that front third of your palette. As you move further forward from that, the kind of deity notes evolve to give you a little bit of a pear. You get a kind of oily pear, but then a juicier fig underneath. And then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palette, it's all about the big, juicy black currant. Yeah, I think the way that that goes together is really, really quite nice. So the big, juicy, oily black currant that sits there and gives you this, I say juicy, but it gives you that dry, juicy character as well, which is great. And that's kind of in keeping with the whole like long boil, dry barley wine sort of thing that you're getting out of this beer. Really is lovely. But then I think you do get a little touch of, just behind the very front tip of your tongue, you do get a little touch of like blackberry out of this one, but it's not overly prominent, I would say. It's not overly poignant, I think, as you can say, in terms of the flavour, but it works, you know. The way the fruity character in this beer goes together is really nice. Lots of black currant for me and lots of prune. I think those are the two things that stick out most in the fruity side of this beer. But yeah, awesome stuff. That's just a completely... It's a big change of pace, this one, for me, compared to what I've had from Tempest before. But then again, I've drank, I think this one, compared to other beers I've had from Tempest, I'm drinking this one aged like 2 years or something like that, which is, I don't think, something I've done with Tempest beer before. So yeah, could just be that. But it's if it has aged, it's aged very, very nicely, very silky smooth sort of thing, this one. So I think on this note we should move on and round off with the mouthfeel section of the video. So for me, like I said, it's definitely a full-bodied beer. The carbonation is very smooth. The whole vibe of this beer is very silky and smooth. So yeah, lovely big sort of silky smooth character coming out of this beer. Absolutely love it. Yeah, lovely big silky smooth thing. But yeah, for me, the way that this goes together is awesome. Yeah, big, thick, oily, silky smooth sort of thing. The malt base and the wood that we say in this one, there's a bit of dryness from the wood, real smoothness to it as well, and it gives you, the spirit layer gives you a good little bit of sweetness and kind of aromaticity. The malt side of the beer is very smooth and savoury to a point, but then you get a big sweetness on top, and it's quite a dry sweetness that lingers there into the aftertaste. The hoppy side of the beer, I think this beer, it has got a little bit of IBU to it, which is interesting. I'm maybe getting about 30 or 40 IBUs out of this beer, because you do get that aromaticity out of it. But of course, then you're going into arguments about perceived bitterness versus calculated bitterness. I think the calculated bitterness of this beer would be quite low as it stands, but the perceived bitterness would be a bit higher. So that's worth paying attention to for sure. And then yeah, on top of the fruity, on top of that, you've got the fruity side of the beer, which for me has a bit of sharpness in the beginning and real juiciness, but then it just mellows out and gives you that soft, kind of dry, fruity note. And I think the way that that goes together is really, really nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Lovely beer, this one. Definite change of pace from what I've tried from Tempest Brewing Company before, but it is really interesting, this one. And cool to see such a complex bourbon note in this one. It makes me think that I should try some of these bourbons and see what they're all about. Or maybe I should have got one of the single barrels, but this is just the one that caught my eye because it was the combination of all three. So yeah, really impressed with this. But another solid beer from Tempest Brewing Company. Does it top Old Parochial or Dreams in Sequence? Not sure about that, but still beautiful beer, this one, and you can't ask for much more these days. So I think we can leave it at that for this review. This one was the Worlds Within Worlds, a 12% bourbon barley-aged barley wine blend from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels in the Scottish Borders region. If you get the chance to try some of the beers, I thoroughly recommend it. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Tempest Brewing Company as well. And we will absolutely return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very shortly. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.